Hey folks, it's Andy Tyndall. Some quick highlights for today's show. One of the highlights that comes to mind is a quote that says, "Tell me what you pay attention to, and I'll tell you who you are." That's a quote from Spanish philosopher Jose Ortega y Gasset. Why that quote? Well, today's episode is all about focus. And we get to have a conversation with Curt Steinhorst, who's the author of the book, Can I Have Your Attention? He's all about helping people find focus. What I find amazing about Curt is that he was diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder, a while back. This guy found a way to work through that and become president of his class in college. He goes on to become an entrepreneur. But not only that, he finds a way to help others find focus. And I'm talking about folks who are high-level business executives, well-known athletes, well-known business entrepreneurs. And ultimately, this guy really runs a great consulting firm to help anybody out there that's looking to find focus. In our show, he talks about some simple techniques from his book that we all can apply. One is the concept of being a sailboat versus a raft. And then he goes into the 4 E's as it relates to focus. And those 4 E's are our energy, our environment, our emotion, and our experience. I hope this episode is helpful for you in finding more focus. To the Human Side of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Andy Tyndall. And, for today, it's all about focus. We're living in a world filled with distractions. And our guest is an expert in the science of attention. He's a keynote speaker. He's a best-selling author, a Forbes columnist. He's the founder of Focuswise. And, today we have Curt Steinhorst on the show to really highlight how we can get more attention and actually chat about his book, Can I Have Your Attention? Curt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Looking forward to our chat, man. So at the top of every show, we kick off with 2 very, very simplistic questions, just kind of see who we're talking to and that sort of thing. So if you were to have a blackout in your house and you did have a little old school, one of those combo television VCR things, and you found that, but it somehow magically worked. And there were 3 VHS tapes, but these VHS tapes were only 80s shows. Number 1, The Golden Girls. Number 2, Alf. And number 3, The A-Team. Which one would you pick and why?
Well, brilliant question. And I'm waffling between 2 different versions. So today I would have to go with the A-Team because I saw the newer movie. I vaguely remember it, but there's something about my vague recollection of the originals that I'm wondering if it was as cheesy as I think it probably was. And then on the other side, I have to admit the only one that I remember decently well is embarrassingly The Golden Girls. And the reason is because my mom watched it. And so there's, if it's just nostalgia and, how can you not love Betty White? Then I might end up, as long as no one ever found out about it, and I could deny it for the rest of my life, I might actually put in that Golden Girls VHS.
The Golden Girls is a great choice. Tons of life lessons in there, and it was just amazing to see those women just get after and have a fun life. So great choice right there. All right, so if we think about kind of moving from TV to I guess kind of like film or sci-fi. If you had to live your life in one of 3 sci-fi worlds, and these are your 3 choices, which one would you pick? Number 1, Star Trek. Number 2, Lord of the Rings. Number 3, Harry Potter.
Well, I think it depends on which role I play. I'm a big sci-fi fantasy guy. It's a guilty pleasure, and so I have to go with Harry Potter. The reason you can't go with Lord of the Rings is, even though it sounds magical, it's actually like straight up pre-electricity. It has none of the amenities that we're used to. So I have to get away from that. Star Trek, is a good choice because it has all the technology that we dream of. And so that's kind of fun. Yeah. But ultimately, if I could be a wizard and knowing in the end the good guys win, and I could do things that no one else is able to today, I don't know how you can't pick Harry Potter. I want to be a magician ultimately.
I never thought about that answer like that, because if you can be a wizard, you can create whatever technology you technically want.
That's right.
Good answer. Good answer. And so, would you wear all the gear, wear all the costumes and all that kind of stuff associated with it if you're immersing yourself in the Harry Potter world?
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to us going to what they were in Harry Potter right now for everybody. I think it's super fun. So yeah, it's like a perk, not a cost.
That's good, man. Great answer. Always fun. So, man, read your book. It was really, really helpful for me in so many different ways in terms of obtaining more focus. Before we get into that, just want to make sure that if people want to get a hold of Curt, they know where to find him. So is there social media, a website, or anything along those lines you want to highlight before we get going?
Yeah, great question. I oddly, because of the nature of my job, I'm not as active in most social media spheres. LinkedIn is the place that I am. I do maintain a regular presence. And then honestly, just my email or website. So curtsteinhorst.com or focuswise.com. Those are the places that are the easiest to find more about the work we're doing, ways to get resources. And, I hate to say fill out the form because that's sometimes super annoying. So if you wanted to just email me, you can just email me at cs@focuswise.com.
Awesome.
cs@focuswise.com. Yeah.
That's perfect, man. Thank you for that. So, you write this book, Can I Have Your Attention? I loved it because there were just so many great nuggets, so many great processes and ideas in there to help us get off the devices or just even be more productive. So before you write the book, though, you have to, kind of like get going in this world of the science of attention. How do you initially get started in the field of the science of attention and that sort of thing? Because that's a different career choice than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any university counselors recommending my career. So I think anyone who gets into something like this has to in some way stumble into it. And so for me, there are a few data points that ultimately coincided into this unique niche that is speaking and writing and working with organizations on focus and distraction. And first is I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder as a kid. And so I've always been personally fascinated, tried to figure out workarounds. How do I actually get work done? Why does self-help tips so rarely work for me? Things like that. And then never was medicated, but right. I ended up starting my own business in 2011. And that was the first time that just the onslaught of communications coming at me, the dozens of small tasks I had to get to, combined with, the desire not to have to go back home and move in with my parents, made me have to get really serious about how can I focus and stay on task. Yeah. And then what ends up happening is I'm running my own small business. Part of the work I was doing, I was a contributor and one of the leading voices for this generational research firm, which was the #1 generational research firm in North America. And I was speaking around the country on generational trends. So I was personally running a business, studying generational trends, how technology changes how we behave, and then, dealing with my own challenges around ADD. And what ends up happening is actually Practical is a friend and someone who I was coaching then gave me some strategy advice on how do I make better business decisions. I was never taking a business class in college. I was not planning to run a business. Fantastic. And we're at lunch and I'm telling him all about focus and distraction. And he said, you get paid to speak on generations. You have a communications consultancy. And the most interesting thing that I've heard from you is this subject on focus and distraction. Why is this not what you're doing full time? And so I ignored that for about a year. And then starting in 2014, I basically said he was right. And what was personal study, I said, I'm going to start talking about it. And so I started integrating it into generational things. And then more and more, it became what I felt was the biggest issue facing, one of the biggest ones facing organizations, but even individuals, what it means to thrive and be productive. And so it turns out the demand was there, and the rest is history.
Man, so I'm blown away at the fact that, you're diagnosed with ADD, right? And then the second component right there, you're like, never on a medication, but I got through it. And so what'd you do? Like, what was the practical approaches, or the practical approach that you took at that point in time to get into your craft without letting that kind of hold you back in a kind of a way?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. So through school and coming out of school into my first job, really, there were just a few things that were working in my favor. One is that I'm hyper competitive.
Great.
And so I always wanted to be, I wanted top grades. I didn't want mediocre grades. I also was very involved at university as president of my class. And I found that for me, if I had a really full load, I would do a lot, but where the ADD would really be a problem is if I had a lot of open space, it would just like create endless open space. And then the other like cheats for me were, I've always known how to leverage people well. So for instance, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to, like, focus would have to occur in bursts, but if I had someone I was studying with, like talking through it, it would go longer, right? I could do things long. So as long as I was with someone who was also studying it with me, I'm so social that I always made the hard stuff I didn't want to do be done in the context of a partnership or with friends or with someone else. And so those were the kind of strategies. And, truthfully, I come from an academic family. And so I can digest concepts pretty quickly. And so I didn't have the challenges until I started having to do a ton of volume of tasks.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's when it really became hard, because it was just, you got to open a bank account. You got to do, and that's when it got really challenging.
So what I really, really liked was that you got through it. But then number two, like, you were just like relying on people, getting to the essence of what we are as humans. You're just going for human connectivity to say, hey, look, I think I can make this more fun, or I think I can concentrate or focus more if I'm around other people, which, man, that's mind-blowing, mind-blowing. Might be tough for somebody who's introverted to do that, but that is a genius way of figuring that out over time.
Yeah, and we're different. I'm actually working with a professor at Michigan State to design a profiling system for how we focus and are distracted in different ways. Some people, being around others is the worst thing they can do to focus. But for some of us, if those people are reinforcing what we should do, it can have a powerful effect. Now, if they're our friends who are playing video games while we're trying to work, being social isn't going to help us. No. So basically, I've always known how to pair correctly. Like, oh, this person's better at it than me, and they're going to be annoyed if I want to quit. So I'll probably get an extra 20 minutes of studying in. Man,
that's so funny, because we've all been in those kind of situations. So I'm pretty sure a lot of the listeners can relate. I could definitely relate to that. The one other thing that you were saying earlier was that, a friend of yours came into your life and said, hey, you're doing all this generational stuff, but you got this thing on focus. That person literally walked into your life with a torch and said, hey, let me show you the way. And sometimes we that's just right. I don't want to go that way right now. I'll see you later. So that's pretty interesting that you eventually took that path and things are starting to go really, really well for you at that point in time. So just if you can frame up, the science of attention in terms of how you view it, and let's get into the book a little bit. That would be great for some of the listeners to understand what you do on a day-to-day basis outside of like giving keynote speeches and writing in Forbes and all that great stuff.
Yeah, great question, and we can pull those some of those ideas apart. And starting with the science of attention, I think this is one of the benefits of my ADD, where hyper focus is actually not the problem if it's something fascinating, complex. For me, it's actually can come at the expense of other things, but where I became truly fascinated by focus and distraction is when it got past the shallow, common, popular narrative around focus. When people think about focus, they think about efficiency, time management, life hacking your way through your day. And when in fact, the really interesting parts are when we understand how the human brain makes decisions about attention. Knowing that attention, if you think about the foundations of attention is the brain's mechanism for selecting among nearly infinite inputs what matters most at a given place in time. Meaning, does the football game matter, or my wife telling me that I need to take out the trash? I didn't hear her because in that selection process, it literally shapes every aspect of our reality. And the factors in the both good and bad technology and space that play a role in how and what gets our attention and how in control of it we are have such incredible implications. And so to like put simply, the science of attention is understanding the mechanisms in the brain, the modes of attention in the brain, and the influences outside of your body that shape what gets your attention and what doesn't.
Whew. Yeah, dude, that's
a lot. I know
that's a lot. No, that's a lot. But it's super, super important for everyone to realize this right now. I didn't mention this at the top of the show, but you have a fantastic podcast also. Add that to your list of things called the Focus Break, if I'm correct, right? So I remember
that's right.
Listening to one episode, and I believe you're talking about your grandmother, and she talks about how COVID was the worst thing that she'd seen in her 95 years at that point in time, and just to see the impact that isolation had on someone her age, and kind of looking at how that tied into attention going forward and what the world eventually has become as a result of that. It was just really mind-boggling to me to see a person from her standpoint still needing to have attention at the age of 95 or so, up there in age and that sort of thing. So in the book, you talk about technology being a big distractor, whether it's, devices or some of the social media platforms and that sort of thing. But you give a lot of great analogies. One was the Raft versus the Sailboat. So I wanted you to touch on that and then see if you can highlight the 4 E's, if at all possible.
Yeah, of course. So the analogy of the raft and the sailboat, it really is kind of a undergirding and a baseline for thinking about how we approach these issues. What it really starts with is saying that attention is your most precious, limited, and valuable resource. So what gets your attention shapes your life, and you can be in control of it. But in a world like we have today, the imagery is that we're in the middle of a storm, that we have, you have advertising screaming for your attention, 4,000 to 7,000 advertisements every single day. You have rising expectations from work. In fact, since COVID, from February 2020 to February 2021, 148% increase in meetings, 40.6 billion more emails sent, 50% of messages in Microsoft Teams are responded to within 5 minutes. And so technology has all these things that are saying, pay attention to this, do this, do this. And so we're in the middle of a storm. And I think the question is, are we a raft? Meaning that we're a total victim to outside forces. We have lost complete control of our attention. Or do we realize that we can equip ourselves like a sailboat? And a sailboat does not run independently of these forces. I think that's what's important to understand. The goal cannot be for us us to ignore, go back into a cave, that technology is all evil. No, we live in the world. You cannot be successful with a fax machine, right? Like a carrier pigeon is not going to do it. But you also can equip yourself so that you are actually driving, you are actually directing rather than having it direct you. And I think most people, unfortunately today, although The Social Dilemma, that documentary was helpful in helping people understand, most people are completely unaware of how much a victim they are to whatever is being put in front of them by adversarial interests. And that was really the part of what that podcast was about with my grandmother.
Yeah, man. And to tie that back into the social dilemma you just mentioned there, I think you have a little component in there in the book where you're kind of like highlighting how the chemical reactions that go off in our brain are almost like if someone went to a casino in Las Vegas and that sort of thing, and just, kept on betting, and you might get a small win, and then you keep on betting some more, and maybe you get a big win, but you're just addicted to the risk reward response kind of thing. So.
Yeah, it's called intermittent reinforcement. It's the potential. We get an associated reward. Our brain releases the neurotransmitter dopamine, which I'm sure most people have heard of at this point. Yep. And whenever you open up your phone, someone said something about you on Facebook, and it was someone said you were important. They paid attention to you. Neurodopamine shoots, and it says, oh, that makes me feel good. I want that again. So now the possibility of that being there means I can go back to my phone anytime I'm tired, anytime I'm frustrated, and maybe something like that will be there again. And the possibility of it, not whether it's there or not, is what makes us have this associated reward. And so, yeah, there are some things working against us for sure that draw us back to our devices. Even though there's a whole lot of evidence that says it makes us have mental health issues, depression, anxiety, ruminating thoughts, overloading our short-term memory. Like, there's all sorts of negatives, but it still doesn't, we don't make very good decisions based on what we should want. We are very much sometimes victims to the impulses that are and the things that are thrown in front of us,
Yeah, when that phone chimes at 10 o'clock at night and it's bedtime and I pick it up, that's probably not the right move if I'm trying to settle down and go to sleep.
Yeah. Well, I will say, and you mentioned the 40s, like one thing I think can be hard in this conversation and, the human side of things is actually recognizing, like, what is it that causes that? Well, humans are fundamentally social. And when someone sends you a message, they're saying, one, I'm giving you attention, and they're saying, do you value me? Will you respond? Right. And that's actually how it's always been. Like, we're social beings, and attention is social. And so it makes sense that we would respond to that. It actually is it's pretty unrealistic to think that somehow we would go against what has worked for humanity forever, which is to be communal and social. And so any solutions around this has to really incorporate the realities of what people are wired to do, how we're designed. And so I wouldn't feel guilty if I want to respond to a message. Maybe I would want to set some boundaries or parameters that would allow me to be fully present in the place I am at times that I have things like sleep I need to attend to,
Gotcha. So if we were to start off out of those 4 E's that we mentioned a little bit earlier, where should someone start? Because you got energy, environment, experience, and emotion. Is there a particular order that we want?
Yeah, I think energy is a fun one to start. And so here's what this means is there's multiple ways of thinking about attention, but let me make it really simple here. You have 2 systems of attention in your brain. One is the executive function, or someone call it top down, meaning that you can proactively decide, I'm going to focus on this. I'm not going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on my paper or my proposal or my whatever. I'm going to ignore the coffee machine, the tweet. I'm making a choice. That's top down. But then we have this other system, and it's bottom up, and that says something new came into my surroundings, and I didn't mean to. But the obvious joke one is like squirrel, right? It's that you're wired. The base system of attention in your brain is wired to be interested in new and novel stimulus. Like we are fundamentally curious beings, and that's critical for both survival and thriving. And so why it's important to start here is to say that if you think about which of these two systems is more critical for survival, it's going to be making sure that you can you see threats quickly, that you find things that would make you feel better, pleasure, that you identify new things. So basically, here's the point: the more tired you are, the more you're going to crave new and novel things.
Get out of here.
Well, that's why when we're tired, we scroll Twitter, we scroll things, because it's like I'm feeding this God-given part of our brain that says, be curious, explore, find new things, examine the world. This is an incredible world. Technology, unfortunately, short circuits that, but it's a good thing overall. And what that means is, in order to focus, to have the top-down system of attention, we have to have the things that give us enough energy for that because it's more energy exhaustive for that to take priority. So eating, sleeping, this is why we're much more able to focus typically after a great night's sleep, after some coffee, if we eat healthy, exercise, all influence our ability to focus. We cannot focus endlessly. And the more we exert that active attention, the more exhausting it is. And the more our brain wants to go into this baseline, which is curiosity, new and novel stimulus.
Neophilia is what you call it, right? Was that it?
That's right. That's exactly right.
So you got energy, emotion, and new experiences, obviously. Where does emotion fit into all of that, would you say?
Yeah. One of many ways to think about emotion is it's actually our brain's prioritization system. And the reason I put this as one of the four primary ones is if we pay attention to what we care about, and particular emotions actually drive focus in particular ways. So hotter emotions, like if I'm really angry, I ruminate. I can't stop thinking about something that makes me angry. If I'm really passionate about something, I can't stop focusing on it, right? And so people are like, I can't get focused. I'm like, well, you probably can't get focused because whatever you're trying to get focused on, you don't care about. Like, it doesn't matter to you. And so if you want to focus, if you want to get better at focusing at work, you cannot understate the need to have a direct association with why this thing matters, right? We focus on things that matter. And so there's also other implications. If you are struggling to focus, maybe the best thing you can do is watch a funny cat video. and the reason, it's really funny. There's actually research on this that shows when we're happier, when we're in a better mood, we will delay gratification and focus on harder things. But the more we're in a kind of a negative mood, the more we want to go towards whatever will quickly make us feel better. So it's just important to say, like, I can't separate productivity, efficiency, uninterrupted focus from my emotional state and my connection to whatever it is I'm doing.
Wow. Just to hear that part about us delaying gratification when we're in a happier state, that's, very much a unique perspective in terms of how much more we can get done or how much more we're willing to put up with, i.e. delayed gratification, because we're in this happier state. So very, 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 very interesting. And so environment, you talk about the vault and all that environment. Let's hit environment real quick.
Yeah, this may be one of the biggest hidden factors that people seem to ignore, and that's the where you are shapes what you pay attention to. And so when people say they're struggling to focus, what I'll often say is, well, let's fix your space, right? It turns out it's harder to focus when you have kids screaming at you.
Oh yeah,
right.
Oh, yeah. I know that 100%.
Yeah. But it actually goes even deeper than that. The different spaces we occupy, um, they tell us what we are to do based on what we've done. So basically, when it's called cues, but the largest neural connection between short and long-term memory in our brain is spatial, meaning where you were shapes what you remember. Like if I say, do you remember the moment you heard about what happened at the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001? We all remember where we were when we heard it. And so space has this powerful connection to what we are to attend to. We walk into a room, you walk into a living room, you just go and turn on the TV. You walk into a kitchen, you walk into your office. What do you naturally do? And is it actually helping you? This is why I tell people, if you're struggling while working from home and you're sitting on the couch with your computer in your lap at the very same place that you watch the Mavericks beat the Clippers,
nice plug.
Yep. Then of course it's going to be hard. Right. On the other hand, if you have a place, you mentioned Vault, one of the biggest simple ways you can improve your ability to focus is create a place where you go that you don't have access to the world. And so I always want to say, don't work against yourself. This isn't about grinding it out. This is about being able to set yourself up to make it easy.
Yeah, just that need for solace is pretty key. I mean, yes, we're social creatures. We're designed to come together and build relationships. But then there's that time to be away. And I believe in the book you also called it quiet time or time for silence in terms of some of the professionals that you've worked for, and some of the best examples or the best performers were those folks that dedicated quiet time. So can you hit on that a little bit? Because I found that very intriguing in terms of just being away from everybody.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things we have to fight for, that in today's world is not just not a given, but it's not rewarded or valued, especially if you're in corporations and you're in leadership. We did a study with consulting partners at a bigger consulting firm and found that 85% of their time was taken. And yet the only way to have effective prioritization, strategy, the ability to identify what matters, what doesn't, creativity, all of that happens only when we have space outside of the noise. We cannot we can't get clarity when we're inside the noise. We have to step out of it. And so I used a few examples of people that are just peak performers that go against the grain. One is John Kim, who is top hedge fund financial expert who has beat the market reliably, managed one of the most famous billionaires' money in the world. And he spends 2 hours a day in the morning just in a library with nothing but a notepad and books, because he understands that it's not how fast the markets are changing, it's how well he sees the future, right? Another example I used in the book was Mark Rampolla, a friend and client. He created Zico coconut water, which literally created an $8 billion industry in that he brought coconut water to the world. And he did it while taking a half day every Thursday, fully off. So he's in the middle of starting a business. It's supposed to, the rule of thumb on starting a business is you never stop. You have to be high paced, fast. And he realized at least 4 to 5 hours a week, he needed to get fully out of the noise, because it was the only way that he was ever able to actually understand and effectively think on and into the future. And so, I just want to fight and push and tell everyone that you deserve, and it is a necessity if you want to have real differentiated value in the world today, to create rhythms and rituals of Sabbath in some form or another.
So he flipped the script. He did the exact opposite of what any emerging business owner or new entrepreneur, quote unquote, should be doing. He was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take half day every Thursday and just think about life and think about the ideas that come to me and put them in play. So that that's pretty strong. So you deal with a lot of folks in the world that are pretty successful, whether they're an athlete or they're corporate executive or some sort of entrepreneur. What are those folks asking you about right now as it relates to your firm and what you're doing for them?
Yeah, I think the big challenges right now are, especially for the C-suite, is what does the future of work as we come back from the pandemic? In particular, what does it look like to prioritize well-being? How are we to navigate the hybrid environment, bringing people back? And so I think, how are we to equip people for working in a changing environment? The interesting thing right now is that we've actually seen that the pandemic created an increase in productivity overall, but there's some real fears about sustainability. Burnout's higher than ever. Classic work-life boundaries have been abandoned. And so, I think when organizations and leaders are coming to me, I think they're really asking to me for my organization to be a part of that conversation of what it needs to look like moving forward. And I would say that my primary perspective is the reason increased productivity occurred is because they removed the distractions. And so if you're going to bring, but what's at risk is the long-term need that people won't focus on work without feeling like it's a part of a community that they value. And so it's how do you bring people back to work but don't do it at the cost of putting back upon them the things that made work so interrupted and unsustainable before COVID. So it's how do we put focus and attention back at the center of work?
Yeah, man, that's you're right. That's all around the world, and everyone is trying to figure that out. So you providing that kind of insight to those folks is just simply amazing. From the standpoint of techniques that someone who may not be in corporate America, maybe they're in a marriage and they're trying to maintain focus, or just trying to get back into the world as some of the COVID restrictions are getting lifted. What's a simple technique you think that might work for a lot of people? Some simple suggestions that you might have.
Yeah, number one is focus doesn't occur in a vacuum. And so you need to have, we call them attention allies, which just means a really simple conversation with the people whose attention, who deserve and demand your full attention. And all it is some really basic questions like, in what time and place are we to be unavailable to everyone else but us? So if they matter, when do they get your full attention?
Okay.
Like, hey, at dinner, we're going to do no technology, or we're going to be fully available. And then on the other side is when are we allowed to be fully unavailable to one another? Meaning, no one benefits from your partial attention. So the idea that we express love by assuming that whatever need we have at any moment, there should be a text reply within minutes. Like, we actually should love one another better and say, during these hours, it's expected that you don't respond except for an emergency, because I expect to be able to get all of you. So it's number one is have a conversation so that you can divide your time, but not your attention. These hours are going to be fully devoted to this. These hours are going to be fully devoted to this. And then you set up visual indicators and reminders and, set up the systems that actually reinforce that. Like, I have a sign outside the door. When the sign's there, Dad's not available. These types of things.
Does that even really work with your kids?
The 4 and 6 year olds can be trained. The 2-year-old knows no boundaries.
That's great. So, but a simple act of just putting that sign up lets everybody know, hey, look, guys, this is my time right now. I'm going to be working, and I'll get you your attention when this time block is over.
That's right. The really, really key piece. Maybe if you don't remember anything else, if we're this far into the podcast, is attention is too valuable to be divided. The rare gift that you can give to people is your full attention. And so if a kid comes in and interrupts you, one of the things I would say is, like, give them short, full attention. like fully stop what you're doing, fully focus on them, and then say, I need to get back into work. It's this everyone gets a piece and no one gets all of, that leaves you unsatisfied, creates shallower relationships, makes everyone feel guilty, and makes all of us wonder why we're not connecting well.
Curt, you just reminded me of several occasions where I forget to lock my office door, and one of my kids comes strolling in while I'm in the midst of some sort of call or something like that going on. And two things happen. For me, it's a little bit of grace and a little bit of gratitude. So I have brought them in and say, hey, I'll introduce them to whoever I'm talking to on that virtual call or whatever it might be. And so the person on the other end of that video, they are so gracious. So there's your grace. And then whichever kid it is, they're like, oh, Daddy, thanks a lot. And so that gratitude element comes in, and they feel, I guess, fulfilled, and they get out of it. They don't try to bang on the door again. So you make a really, really good point. So great grace and gratitude. Let's talk gratitude for a second. You emphasize the importance of gratitude also. How can people apply that aspect? Because sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I have to do this or I have to do that, as opposed to, well, I get to do this or I get to do that. So where does gratitude fit in the whole realm of focus?
Yeah, it is so fundamental, because what we really are trying to do is we're trying to put into play practices that will make sure that the lens of what gets our attention are the things that drive us towards thriving in life, right? And so gratitude is a really great example of when we institute simple practices, then what we see in the world actually looks very different. The reality we live, what gets our attention, is different. And so there's a few different really practical ones. One is, and I want to just be honest, like all of these seem to fall in and out of rhythm for my family and for me. So I just want to not create a painting of like, we do this perfectly all the time, but
that's because you guys are human. You're human. That's why they ebb and they flow.
That's right. But like we do 3 gratitudes at dinner. What are 3 things each of us have been grateful for? The 2-year-old's not quite on board. For one thing that doesn't fall out of rhythm is I say a prayer with my boys every night. And so each of them has to say one thing they're thankful for. And I do too. So that's like something that every day. Other ones can include, I do a journal, which I'll just be honest, it's like, I'm feeling guilty because I did it for years, and the last couple of months I've fallen on the wayside, but I start my journaling routine with 10 things that I'm grateful for from the day before. And so it's fun because it changes from like big stuff, which actually doesn't have that much power, to Bahama Bucks, cherry, pina colada flavored snow cones. Like, you know what I mean? Like it gives me a chance to say, like, my daughter said, I love you too, Daddy, which is, she's just learning, she's 2. So that's
simple, but
literally yesterday.
Simple, but great. Man.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, just like what makes it so powerful? And I lean on research author Sean Aker on this, but is that ultimately you are giving attention to things that made you happy, which means you've doubled the amount of time you experience them. Like, if you think about gratitude as that.
You had the original experience, and now you're going back and revisiting it and giving it its flowers, so to speak, giving it the accolades that it deserves because it made you feel like that. So that's, wow, that's powerful. Really, 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 really powerful. Thank you for going there in terms of gratitude. So you mentioned prayer, and I wanted to ask you, like, you're a wildly successful entrepreneur. You're connected with so many other wildly successful people. My question to you is, what role does your creator play in your ultimate success?
Yeah, great question. And I think that fundamentally, we are experiencing in the world today this great question of what does it mean to be human? And because if you think about it, for all of history, or really, we're right now, the vast majority of what had defined humanity, what did you do all day, right? It's just changing so rapidly, and so I made a decision a few years ago that that I would bet everything on us being decidedly different. We call image bearers, imago Dei, born in the image of God. Right. And why that is so essential to me is because in my world, there is the largest narrative is that we're the same as all other animals, or we're the same as machines, just not as good. That there's nothing about us, and that's kind of the story of the Silicon Valley technologists, right? And it basically says you're just an animal, you're a victim of your impulses. I say no. I say humans have a large history of overcoming, have distinct value, and I can go into that. And so it is the foundation for me of the way I think about human thriving, and then even deeper, I guess, would be to say that it frees me, my perspective on my relationship with my creator, frees me to not have the weight of the world on my shoulders. Wow, wow. This is a fun journey, but it's not one that I'm ultimately, it's going to be okay without me.
So you're saying the exact opposite of what I hear a lot of successful people say. Oh, I'm self-made. I'm self-made. You're like, no, not really. I'm not self-made.
The most unhealthy moments of my life, I might think that.
Oh man, that's great, man. So let me ask you this one. A lot of the guests come on. I ask them, what does the human side of greatness mean to them in their purview, their perspective?
Yeah, I go two directions on this. And the first direction is the human side of greatness is, in fact, Bruce Lee said the great warrior is the average man with laser-like focus. And so I say I live in a world of focus as someone with ADD, and I say that the human side of greatness is those who simply are able to take control of their attention and learn what it means to focus.
Man, that's powerful.
So if you want to achieve anything excellent, it means focusing at the expense of a lot of things. While the noise of the world says, do you know about this? Have you heard this? Have you kept up to date on this? Have you watched this? Have you, posted this? The only way to be great is to do the opposite and to focus in on a very few things at the expense of all that's out there and all that is saying you need to attend to.
Curt, I've heard a lot of answers to that question, and that one is phenomenal. Straight up, that's phenomenal, man. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. So coming down to our last minute or two here, at the end of every kind of show, we are always looking for some quote or motto, just something that you live your life by that maybe you can share with the listeners as they're receiving the podcast.
Sure. I have a quote in the early part of my book. Actually, it's in the introduction, and I spotlight two different characters, one who's distracted and one who's focused. And the quote is on the focused person's wall, and it says, "Tell me what you pay attention to, and I will tell you who you are," by a Spanish philosopher by the name of Jose Ortega y Gasset. And so I think that's probably the most fitting for me, which is just this constant reminder that if you can control your attention, if you can make decisions about saying this story being thrown at me, it is shaping my perception of reality, and it doesn't have to be in my purview. Like, I can choose to focus on things that are positive. I can choose to focus on things I actually can change. I can take control of. I can do something about. There's very few things that have more power than that.
Dude, that is a great quote. And I hope the listeners go back and pull that one out of the episode, because there's been a ton of them on the shows, on the various episodes, and that one is by far one that stands out to me. The book stands out. Can I have your attention? If anyone hasn't picked it up or read it just yet, I read it. I've read it a few times now, and every time I pick up something additional. Curt, I want to just thank you for being on the show, and thank you for your time today, my friend.
Hey, this is truly my joy, Andy. I love what you're doing, and man, I'm just really grateful for the time. This has been a great way for me to get to step back and think a little bit on what I don't do enough, which is what is it that makes me passionate and distinct and different, and the unique journey that's been put before me.
Oh, your journey is definitely unique. To get through all those different phases of your life, man, it is nothing short of spectacular. And so, thank you again, and we'll catch you just a little bit down the road, my friend.